So in this video, I'm going to give you a little introduction to the Rhino software. First thing that I'll mention is that when you open a file, it starts off in a metric template. So if you look down here at the bottom of the screen, you'll see millimeters. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open a new file. And when I do this, there's a bunch of them that are like large objects, and architecture is fairly large. So I would always start with a large object if you're doing a building type of project. And there are a number of options here, feet and inches. I'm not really sure what the difference would be between inches and feet and inches. So I'm going to go with the first one. Probably the differences are rather minor. The first thing that you'll notice that's maybe different than what you're used to, and basically I'm going to do a lot of comparison with AutoCAD because that's a software that probably you all know fairly well, is that there are these 4 viewports. And one of the reasons for this is that Rhino is considered a really good tool for modeling in 3D. And because of that, it's sort of helpful to be able to see something that you're drawing in more than one viewport. So, if this really bothers you, or you just need to have a bigger screen to see what you're doing, you can always change it to a single viewport. So right now I'm on the viewport layout tab, and if I click on the single viewport, I can see just one, and I can go back to this one. Now, similar to AutoCAD, you'll notice that there are labels to which what all these viewports are, and you can always kind of come and change these things. So I'm in the top view here. If I go to set view, I could switch it around to another view. Generally speaking, though, you may want to keep it in this kind of configuration. So again, as a 3D modeling tool, you may want to construct something, and sometimes it's helpful that you can see it in multiple viewports. So for example, I'm going to go over here to a box tool, and I'm going to start drawing a box in the top view. But one thing you may find this is useful. If I want to give it the Z-axis dimension, I can either do that in the perspective or the right view or the front view. You can see how it's turning, it's highlighting this kind of purplish blue color when I'm in that viewport. Okay, so again, I can move it around and manipulate this thing in the various viewports. Okay. Next, there is a series of palettes over on the right. And I may have had some settings established before I opened this file. So what you see here on the screen may be a little different than what you see when you open up a new file. But regardless, you should be able to sort of toggle through and check out some of these features. The one I'm in right now, this is the layer palette here. Similar to AutoCAD, layer names, you can change layer names by double clicking, you can assign colors, you can assign materials, etc. And I would use them very similar to the way that you use them in AutoCAD. To distinguish between different categories of things can be helpful, so you can turn things on and off if necessary. The next one, the properties window, generally speaking, it's similar to how it works in AutoCAD. If I click on an object, it's going to tell me what layer it's on and a number of other of its characteristics. So that's a useful tool. One thing that's a little different about the interface in Rhino is you can see that there are a series of object snap checkboxes down here. You can turn them entirely off by clicking on Object Snap at the bottom here. This is similar to AutoCAD's status bar, or turn them on. But it's kind of nice because you can always see what's on and off at any given moment. Okay. Next thing, inputting distances is a little bit different in Rhino than it is in AutoCAD. let's say I want to make a line, and I type in line. It has a command line as well. When I click a point and I'm going to input a dimension in AutoCAD, if I were to input 5 using a template that has been set to architectural with feet and inches, and I want to give it a distance, if I input 5, it's going to assume 5 inches, right? So I'll do that, 5, and then enter. What's happened is it's made a line that's 5 feet. So the default when you enter 5 is 5 feet. So you just want to kind of keep that in mind. In AutoCAD, if you just put 5 without, the little inch symbol, the double tick mark, you're going to get 5 inches. In Rhino, it's the opposite. Okay. Now, another thing you may have noticed when I was drawing that line. So let's go back and do a line. If I click a spot, and again, let's just say I'm doing my 5, and it's going to be feet, and I press enter. You have to confirm that you want to place it after. So in AutoCAD, if you did 5 and then enter, it completes the line. But in Rhino, you need to click an extra time to place that line. Okay, so just kind of keep that. One thing that also is a little bit different, we'll talk a little bit about navigating and moving around the space. But when I click on an object, right, and I'm kind of panning around here or doing a kind of orbit, this icon that appears is called the Gumball. So I have my Gumball turned on. If I turn it off, it's going to disappear. If I turn it on. The Gumball is kind of helpful to, I can move something a certain distance. If I click on one of the arrowheads, say -4, it's going to drop down. The Gumball also has other things that you can kind of manipulate with it. You can sort of stretch things and rotate them. So, you may want to just kind of bring in a 3D form and just kind of play around with what it can do, right? So, yeah, so that was a rotate process there. You could give it a dimension or an angle to rotate, that sort of stuff. So again, that's the Gumball, and that can be a really useful thing to turn on. So as I mentioned, I had just typed in L for line. Similar to AutoCAD, as soon as you initiate in the input of characters, it's going to generate menus for you to choose from. So I can go with what the assumption is line if I typed in L, or I could choose from one of these other options. Now, moving around the various viewports is something that takes a little bit of getting used to. I'm using a mouse right now, and in order to do this 3D orbit, I'm holding down the right mouse button. Okay. I have a roller ball on mine, and that is permitting me to zoom in and out. Okay, so there's orbit and zooming in and out. I want to pan, you need to hold down the shift key. So I'm panning left to right. Hold down the shift key and right click at the same time. Okay. The other viewports, again, zooming, I'm doing that with the roller on the mouse. I don't have to hold down shift to pan in the 2D views. So I can just hold down shift by it, or hold down the right mouse button and shift around. So again, the application, its real benefits have to do, I think, with 3D modeling. So I find it's a little bit more cumbersome if you're trying to generate 2-dimensional drawings sometimes. But if you're interested in working with form, this is a really good tool. You may find that you can build forms in the software and then export it to other applications and complete whatever kind of project work that you're doing. So who uses the software? To some degree, architectural designers use it. But I think, it's also a kind of popular tool with industrial designers and, people that work with more curvilinear forms. So, I mean, here's a few examples of some of the things that are built using the software. Yeah, so to kind of generate this kind of, what people might describe as organic form, this tool is really much more easily manipulatable for doing those kinds of things. You may find that if you have an interest in generating these kinds of forms, you really probably will need to do a little bit of research and find other people who have done similar things. So that's, the most basic introduction to the software. Once you get into some of the tutorials for some of the assignments, you'll get an opportunity to kind of explore them in a little bit more depth.